Hey everyone, welcome back to the Ceres podcast. I'm your host Stelios. Today I'm joined by two great people, Lynda Simmons from NEODA and Hage from Rise Communications. In this episode, we discuss the 10 years of National Fish and Chip Day, NEODA's behind the scenes work, industry challenges, and why this annual celebration is more than just a day. It's a powerful platform to really boost the fish and chip industry. We've already started out at Ceres putting out some great ideas for National Fish and Chip Day. As you'll hear in this episode, we've put out an article as to why you should get involved, and another one with loads of different ideas. So, if you do want to start planning something special, the time is now. For example, most businesses start planning for Black Friday in the early summer, and likewise, the likes of Jamie Oliver, who films all his Christmas specials, start in the late summer. So if you want to do an offer for Christmas, let's say, you don't start 2 days before Christmas Day. You have to start early, start planning, start thinking, and the same is with National Fish and Chip Day. So NEODA and Ceres and lots of people are putting out some great resources. Do some of your own research too. We don't have to do everything we say. It doesn't always have to be an offer, but hey, why not? You know, if you can do it, it's a great marketing expense, brings in customers for the long run. But there are lots of other ideas too, as you'll hear in this episode and you'll see on our articles. So do try think out the box. We'll help you where we can. And just let us know what you do, because we'd love to publicise it too and get the most out of it for you. At Ceres, we've been working on something special. Our powerful business calculator designed to help you break down your costs and boost your profits. Understanding your inputs and outputs are absolutely crucial. Without knowing this, you are flying blind. These calculators help you get a clear picture of your business finances, ensuring you know exactly where your money is going. It's all right looking at your menu or the till at the end of the week and thinking, damn it, I need to put my prices up. But do you know where to? Do you know where to start? Do you know how bad the situation is? Or is it money going out elsewhere? Because it could be that your fish and chip prices are okay. So it's all about knowing. It doesn't mean you do have to put your price up. It doesn't mean you don't have to. It just means if you know which direction to take. So, if there's anything that we can help you with, let us know. But these calculators are free. Use them. Go on our website and just start understanding everything about your business. Today's sponsor is the Ceres Fish Cake Mix. Are you tired of losing gross profit opportunities with fish? Are you sick of boiling potatoes for ages? Or is it just you don't have time to do fish cakes? Well, look no further than the Ceres Fish Cake Mix. With cod and haddock prices continuing to rise, maximising profit is more important than ever, but not at the cost of quality. Our Ceres Fish Cake Mix allows you to turn every ounce of fish into profit without compromising on quality. Instead of discarding trimmings, you can just make the perfect fish cakes, use the trim, and it all goes to make great homemade fish cakes, perfect size, perfect weight, and the customers are just buying a delicious homemade fish cake for great value, because that's what a homemade fish cake is, great value, and off they go. And it's just profit. We've got customers that are buying frozen at sea fish, trimming it down, and then again, they've got an 8 ounce, a 9 ounce, a 6 ounce, whatever ounce you want to be. Get it to where you want it to be within reason, and then all the trim goes into fish cakes. But the same with, they're using, another customer using skinless fresh haddocks. They come with a grade of 8 to 10, 7 to 9, whatever it may be. Well, you don't want to have a gap of, 2 ounces, 50 grams. That's a lot of trim that's going out the door. So, our homemade fish cake mix is fast, easy, profitable. You can prepare fish cakes that it takes to even get the hob at a boil when you're boiling potatoes. And we've curated countless of recipes to get you started. So, make more profit today with Ceres Fish Cake Mix, available at ceres.shop with free mainland UK shipping. And if you want exclusive insights, special offers, competitions, latest industry news straight to your inbox, join our mailing list at www.ceres.shop. It's the best way to stay ahead in the business. The links will also be in the show notes, so be sure to check them out. All right, it's time to get into my conversation with Lynda and Joe. I hope you can remain open-minded about Fish and Chip Day and doing as much as you can with it. And again, if you do something, let us know. And be sure to let your local media know, because they will want to know about anything that you're planning to. Joe, Lynda, welcome to the podcast. How's it going?
Great, thank you. Thank you for inviting us.
No, like I was saying to you at the awards, I don't know why we haven't had you on sooner. We should probably at least have you on once a year to talk about National Fish and Chip Day, really. So let's pin this down for year 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So providing we're all still doing it, I guess. Yeah, I can't see why not, though. But, to many, there's many that know about National Fish and Chip Day, but there are many that don't know about NEODA. So, and again, I was sort of thinking about this when I was writing my notes, and I grew up in a fish and chip shop, and I always saw the NEODA stamp on a box of fat and a box of oil, and I never understood what it was. So, Lynda, if you could start us off with what NEODA is and how NEODA ended up getting involved with National Fish and Chip Day.
Sure, I can. So NEODA's been around for about 80 years, and it is the trade body that has been formed to raise awareness and raise standards within the industry. So one of the things that we have is an oil monitoring program. So that stamp that you see on the boxes is there to show that the oil that has been packed in that product, the oil or fat, is labelled correctly, is in fact what it says it is, and weighs the right amount. So back in the 80s, we had a lot of products that were underweight, mislabelled, being sold as rapeseed, whether they're in fact sunflower oil or vice versa. So back in the 80s, we had a massive problem. So the oil monitoring program was set up then predominantly to find out who these companies were that were misleading the consumer, really, and making profit out of it. So I think the thing is, we have basically been a success, such a success that in fact you don't really find anything anymore, which is great news. We run the program monthly, we collect samples monthly, test them for those three components, and generally we find a little bit of underweight somewhere, a little bit of misinformed claims, but not necessarily deliberately trying to mislead the consumer, just I think maybe a little bit of ignorance as to what the legislation is nowadays. So that's how that came about. So the stamp on the box shows that those products have been packed by a reputable person, and that product is in fact what it says it is and weighs the right amount.
And just for clarification, you haven't been there for 80 years.
No, nearly. I feel like I have. I started back in the 80s,
okay,
working for the Food and Drink Federation, which was where NEODA and SCOPA, the other trade association I worked for, were both housed under the Food and Drink Federation. And then back in the early 2000s, I was asked if I would go self-employed and run those trade associations separately. So I've been doing it since then. So I feel like I have been there as a child as well as a grown up, but still the same person.
Talking of dubious claims, I remember a few years ago, and maybe this is something that you guys dealt with at NEODA, but I remember there was an oil company that came out, and they were really, maybe it was got to be 10 years ago, and they were talking about fat-free oil, and do you remember that one? Yeah, and I remember thinking, what's
yeah, and we still get it now, Stelios. People claiming it's not GM. Well, it's not GM because it's not allowed to be GM. Yeah. So there's no point in claiming that it's not, knowing that it can't be. So we still get a lot of people doing the wrong things, claiming for things that are sustainable that aren't sustainable, and there's so many things out there, so many standards, as well as the labelling legislation that you've got to be careful of.
You do see that a lot in with meat as well, like hormone-free beef. And again, hormones, it's not allowed in the UK anyway. So it's like,
no, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So we're quite hot on that. We're quite hot on picking people up when they're making wrong claims.
And I guess, what can you do if they're not a member?
We tend to contact trading standards and let them deal with it. There's also the new food crime unit that we've had along to our meetings a couple of times. They're working with the Food Standards Agency, and we've had them along to our meetings, and they're really hot on making these investigations. So if people are making money out of making wrong claims, they're there. So if we find anything, we contact them and they deal with it for us.
Oil and honey, they're the most claimed products, aren't they? Or misclaimed products, Yeah.
I mean, a lot of it, vegetable oil is pretty tasteless, so you wouldn't know whether it's got rapeseed in it or soya or sunflower. It's pretty tasteless. You're not going to really drink that sort of thing. So if the markets are acting in the right way, it's very easy to swap those and put a cheaper oil in. Yeah. And that definitely did used to happen, but it tends not to happen now. But we're on it monthly anyway.
Yeah. Well, what would we do without you then?
Absolutely. and again, I think we fly under the radar a bit. We don't really tend to promote that very well. We do have it on our website and we do have the logo on product, but maybe people don't know that we even do that sort of thing behind the scenes to make sure that the oils and fats going into the industry are in fact regulated by us as well. So
maybe you just need like double the space. So where you've got the logo, just like a nice little slogan or blurb that just says what it is that you do. Because I know a lot of people know nothing about NEODA, like nothing. Because again, you're behind the scenes. You're behind the scenes a few different scenes. Because you're behind the wholesalers and you're behind the manufacturers. So people probably just don't come across that at all.
No, I think you're right. And we do run seminars, and we ran a really successful seminar last year that we had a lot of potential new members invited to. And we cover all sorts of subjects. So that's the sort of thing that we could get out there and say to people, look, we're running this seminar. Come and find out who we are, what we do, what we can do for you, and how much better the industry is because of our standards. So we probably should promote that a little bit more and get more people attending.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think maybe, any sort of positive stories or even negative stories that you want to put out there that set the story straight. We're happy to publicise those things.
Excellent, thank you.
So again, I don't think we've probably explained that to you until we saw you at the awards, and I think I think for definite we could do a lot more there. So moving on to the National Fish and Chip Day, 10 years in the making. Have you two been together at this, Jo, have you been together at this from day one?
Absolutely, okay. Yeah. It's from very last minute and low key beginnings. It started with a phone call from Lynda saying, NEODA have taken on National Fish and Chip Day. Someone came up with the idea and we're going to run with it. And it's going to be, it's going to be a soft launch this year, but we really need you to run the social media. I said, okay. So Lynda said, we've got Twitter set up. So I looked on Twitter and I think it was something like 4 followers and we were following 11 people. No Facebook, no Instagram. And I said, okay, that's fine. When is it? She said, Friday. And this was on the Monday. So it was an interesting week of just getting the social set up that weren't set up, making as much as we could from the Twitter account, following every fish and chip shop we could find, getting the hashtag going. And it was fantastic on the day. Although it was low key, the buzz around it was brilliant. So from there, it's just absolutely flown year on year. As more people get behind it, as it kind of gets credence within the media, it's just become incredible, absolutely incredible.
I think it's 4 days to organise something. It sounds like you had the luxury of time there, to be honest. It sounds like
I was spoiled.
I still complains about it now, Stelios. I don't know why.
Because now you've got 364 days a year, and you're sort of thinking, what do I do with this time? But no, it's one of those things that no matter how much time you have, time doesn't give you money. And I think time is good. Don't get me wrong, but what you could really do with is an injection of £1 million to really throw at it. That
would be lovely.
That would be lovely. And I do think it is one of those things that do need time as well. Year 1 to year 10 is really important because things become sticky after a while, don't they? Especially in media. And I was thinking about this then. I think I mentioned it to you, Jo, last week when we spoke on the phone. I was chatting to a friend of mine, and she says to me, she goes, what I find really crazy is that many chip shops that we all follow will promote, even if it's tongue-in-cheek, will promote National Donut Day and say, don't have a donut, eat fish and chips, or National Burger Day, don't eat that, or do eat that if they do burgers. But then they hardly post anything about National Fish and Chip Day. And one of the arguments, and Mark Petru is one of our co-hosts on the Ceres podcast, and he's always spoke about a national marketing fund, and everyone comes up with all these ideas, and I think they are great ideas, but then the things we also do have, we don't promote. And I think that also sort of baffles me sometimes, is that, you know, and I don't mean that as a negative. I think maybe people don't know what to do or how to do it, or maybe they haven't heard about it, because I still come across people that haven't heard about National Fish and Chip Day. And I do wonder why that is, why, you know, why there is still people that don't know it exists. You know, that is a weird one. But I think,
we do struggle with how people cannot have heard about it, especially because of the involvement of the sponsors and the wholesalers, and, you know, the fact that there is, as you were talking about, time. This is year round for us. It doesn't, you know, the campaign doesn't finish on the 6th of June this year and then that's it. We don't do anything for another 6 months. It's constant, and we're constantly trying to keep the buzz going, the flow going, and build those relationships. So it's intriguing that some shops haven't heard of it.
Yeah, well, I think what doesn't help is that, you know, if we jump to pre-COVID, there was 4 trade magazines, and now there's 2 maybe, and I think that probably doesn't help, because the frequency of someone picking up a trade magazine isn't what it used to be. And I think sometimes people just switch off day to day. You know, I've met some people that have been in the business 10 years and they'll say, I've never heard of Ceres, and we've been in business 18 years. So I think that, you know, and we have quite a very, you know, high traffic schedule when it comes to social media or podcast releases or whatever it is, just seeing shops. So I think some people are just in their own world to some degree.
I think so. Yeah. And I think the shops that do support the day and do get involved in the day are the ones that are reading the trade press. They are the ones that are interested in trends and what's happening and how they can, you know, change things that they do and you know, listen to things like your podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you know, it is just one of them. I think most people, for the most part, once they hear about it, I told a guy yesterday and his eyes lit up. He was like, he was like, what, there's a day for this? I was like, yeah, like, and he was like, I'm going to try do something. And I was like, that's all you can do. Like, and then that, you know, the truth is that is all you can do, is just try do something. You know,
I think we've noticed at the exhibitions, actually, having exhibited at the 3 exhibitions for the last, well, probably 8 years now, we have noticed more and more that people are coming to see us. Initially, everybody was walking past the stand a bit like, oh, don't know who you are, but I don't want to talk to you. And now actually people come over and say, actually, we're a new shop, we're opening next month, we really want to get involved. How do we get involved? And that is so refreshing. And that's probably been for the last 3 years that we've had a lot more positive impact, that people are actually coming to us rather than us going to them. And, you know, Jo has a little competition with her own self to grab absolutely everybody at the show, stick a poster in their bag. She was throwing posters last time to try and get them in the bags to get the interest. And people are actually more aware of it now, which is good.
I think when you're trying to break through the news cycle and the media, the social media, especially new shops, they recognise that they need to do something. So that's why they probably want to get more involved as a new shop. And as someone that's a bit more established, 20 years in the trade, probably feels a bit salty and a bit grumpy. There's a lot of headwinds at the moment. Whereas someone new is thinking, no, I want to do this. I've got to do this. And I think
just embrace every opportunity.
Yeah, and exactly. Especially if you're coming into the trade new, I could make an assumption that they're younger. So younger people generally get behind things like this, don't they? Yeah. So and
as you say, they're all over social media as well, which is the absolute easiest way of making anything happen these days. But
there's no friction in making content no more, is there? Like it's not like it was. Like, you know, thinking about when we started doing videos 10 years ago, like, we were doing videos and it took a lot of effort. It took a lot of, you know, I brought a better camera, I bought lighting, I bought everything. Nowadays, people just grab their phone and walk around with it. So there's just zero friction. And you don't need to be, you know, an Oscar award-winning filmmaker. You know, I've seen some videos that I think, wow, and yet they've had millions of views. And you think,
I mean, look at Chip Shop Diva. I mean, the stuff that they're producing in that shop is and the hits they're getting.
Yeah,
you know, they've got millions of followers now just from a simple walk-in film. Yeah, you know, it's just having being in the right place at the right time and getting
absolutely. And you know, some of my friends mock Chip Shop Diva, or at least the videos, not her personally, and they'll say, oh, they're crap videos. And I know Anthony quite well, and he came on the podcast not long ago, and like he just says, we're not Oscar filmmakers. It's just we're just chip shop owners that are making a video. They're not meant to be the best video. She's not going to be in the Schindler's List as a great actress. She's not. Well, hopefully she's one day, but well done to her if she can. But it's not meant to be that. And I think there's something refreshing about that very easygoing, very
Absolutely.
natural.
It shows the personality of the shop, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. But as Lynda was saying about the shops coming to us and being more open to sort of talking to us about it, the same has happened with the media.
Yeah.
So that's 10 years of slog, really, with the media to build up those relationships. Journalists come and go, but a lot of them will stay in the same sector. They'll stay as foodies. So they come to us now and they say, what have you got? What can we do? What stories can we run? Yeah. And that's on a regional and a national level, which is really, as a PR for me, that's an absolute dream, but it's taken 10 years to get there.
Yeah, well, I guess one positive is that journalists now are so time poor that when you deliver them a positive story like this, it makes sense for them to run it and be involved with it.
And if you give them the material that's good enough for them to not have to do very much with as well, because they are time. So you give them good content that they can literally just
absolutely. That's something we've really spoken about at Ceres for a long time. When we talk to shops about doing more promotion of themselves, is put a pack together. So when the journalist, the local paper gets it, they don't have to really do a lot with it. They might just call you for a bit of follow-up, but you want to make sure they've got all the photos, that they've got a lot of information, not too much information because that also bores them. But, you need to make sure that you've got a good 800 words for them to be able to pick out and make an article with. And maybe then they'll just call you back for a bit of follow-up. But I always say to people, you've got to deliver it to the journalist. They are not, it is not, especially, talking about the local fish and chip shop or local fish and chip scene isn't going to be the same as, I don't know, the war that broke out in Ukraine. Right? It's just not going to be the same. So you need to make, drip feed journalists a little bit. And I think
absolutely. But they like good news stories as well. Yeah. So it doesn't always have to be, the negative. They like the good news stories. But we've got a press release template for National Fish and Chip Day that shops can literally just cut and paste their details in. X shop from X place is doing X on this day. Yeah. Literally and it's written in a way that the journalists can just take it and put it into the publication or online.
That's what you need. One of our customer stroke friends, Martin Robinson, he won a pallet of our batter mix in a competition last year. And he decided that because he'd won, that he was going to do, I can't remember for how many times he did it, but he did free fish and chips for the local care home. And the local media picked it up on it. And, and he was really chuffed. He couldn't believe it. Not only did he win the batter in a competition, but he did something good and he was paid off by also doing something good. And, and I know one of the criticisms you ladies face or the organisation faces is, should I give product away? I'm always a big fan of giving and getting. I really believe, and Martin's a great indication of that because he won something and then he gave it away and he actually built up a lot of goodwill. And I think that National Fish and Chip Day, if you're not going to do big offers, which I still think if you can do a great offer, that's where I'm at. You don't have to, as you've mentioned, but I think that for me, do something that builds goodwill. Because goodwill is what people remember. If you can use National Fish and Chip Day to feed the elderly or, a food bank or a local school, I think that can really drum up a lot of goodwill in the local community.
I think there's quite a lot of that goes on already, actually, within the sponsors and also within the wider trade. So obviously we work closely with Callum, who came to Normandy last year, gave up his time and his van and some of his own product to come and fry for the French and put on that show over there. And it was incredible. And he did that all free of charge. So we are very lucky that we've got a cohort of people that do promote it so well that they're putting their own money and time into it and not asking for anything back.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I just think if we all did that on a local level, like where we are, so I'm based in Atherstone, if I had a fish and chip shop, I would want to do something for the local care home. And I think that way, I just feel like one of the counters I get is, why should I give something away? Why should I?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, you don't have to. There's lots of things you can do. And one of the popular offers I like is actually an offer for another day. So, Fish and Chip Day is on a Friday. So you don't do an offer that day, but you put vouchers in for an off-peak time a week later, or the week, just make sure it's off-peak. So there's lots of options, absolutely. But I could tell that you've probably also faced criticism there because it's on one of your FAQs on the website, and I guess you ladies take sort of the opposite stance to me. I see it as a great marketing opportunity to kick down the doors, whereas you ladies are probably saying, look, you don't have to do that if you don't want to. Like, whereas I'm a bit like, you've got to do something. Why not?
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the criticisms we get is, why is it on a Friday? Friday's already busy. But Friday is synonymous with fish.
Yeah.
Fish and chips is Friday. And the media pick up on that. So it's such a strong connection. It has to be on a Friday, really. But the other thing that we're always saying is that it's not about that day. For us, it's an awareness day about fish and chips, not fish and chip shops, fish and chips, brand fish and chips. So that could be restaurants, cafes, whatever. And for us, it's about re-exciting people into that dish. So we get a lot of people saying, oh, I haven't been to a fish and chip shop for ages. Now I've heard about you, I'm going to go on Friday. And this is like, when we're wearing our sweatshirts going up to the exhibitions, people go, oh, what is this fish and chip day? And they say, well, you're talking about it. That's actually made me really excited. I'm going to go Friday now. So that's what it's about. It's about getting people thinking about the brand fish and chips, and then thinking about going to eat at their local or at their cafe or wherever it is. So it's not about the Friday or the day. It's about promoting the brand and getting people thinking about it more often than just on that one day.
And I think that this is the tricky thing, like, because as an outsider, or all of us actually listening to this, as an outsider, we all think we know better, that, or we'll say, why isn't it a 3-day thing? Why isn't it a 5-day thing? Why isn't it a week thing? Like, and obviously you guys have considered this, I would imagine you have, if you've written about, So, what would be, like, let's say, the downsides of turning it into like a 3-day festival, so people can put a bit of oomph behind it rather than it just being a Friday, let's say?
Well, we wouldn't stop it. I mean, the fact that we hooked up with the D-Day promotion last year meant that people actually decorated their shops and led up to the D-Day. I mean, we changed it to a Thursday last year because we were asked by the organisers of the D-Day festivals across the UK. We were asked to change it and make ours on the same day. So we moved it to the Thursday, which is very unusual. But people had their shops decorated for D-Day leading up to it. So I think lots of shops ran promotions last year for the week leading up to it, which is great. And we certainly wouldn't stop that. In terms of us running it for 3 days or 5 days, we just don't have the funding. We just don't have the funding to keep the momentum going, to get the journalists interested in it, which is what it's about. It's about promoting the day. As you said earlier, if we had a pot of money that we could dip into, fantastic. That would be amazing. We could probably do all these ideas that people come up with, on the London Underground, the tube advertising. I mean, that's thousands upon thousands upon thousands. We don't have that budget. We have a budget of about 50 grand. And for that, we have to pay Joe to do the PR, put on the road shows, do the other bits and pieces of advertising, and then it's gone. We don't have a lot of money to do those expensive grand gestures, unfortunately. But we wouldn't stop anybody running the day for the 3 days or the week. I mean, it came about really because we took over from National Chip Week. So National Chip Week used to be running obviously for a week, and then people lost interest in it, and it was not really doing what it was supposed to do. So when the idea was suggested at one of the Fish and Chip Awards to run a National Awareness Day for Fish and Chip Day, we thought, let's go for it. We seem to be the right people to do it, so we'll do it. We did consider doing it for the week, but as I say, it's a monetary thing really. We just haven't got the funds to keep it going for a week. It would just cost too much money. I don't know if you've got any more to add on that, Joe, but I don't.
Just going back to with D-Day and then some of the shops having the bunting up and things beforehand. That's happened in previous years as well, and it's where we'd always encourage shops, if you want to do a whole week in the build up to it, so you do something every day if you want to, or you run a raffle in the shop starting the Friday before, and it's like, oh, the winner will be drawn next week, and all of those ideas. Shops can do as much or as little. We've always been completely inclusive. We don't want anybody to not get involved because they think they haven't got the budget. As we've said, you could do as little as put some balloons up. We generate the PR from that small budget. I mean, the results last year were absolutely phenomenal. 93 million people had a chance to see, hear or read about National Fish and Chip Day. So that's 93 million people who are thinking, I might have fish and chips tonight. So put some balloons up. just so they can think, oh, okay, I heard about that on the radio, I read about that in the paper, that shop's got some balloons up. Let's go in and let's celebrate the day with them. So it's as simple as that, but you can go as big as you want to go. We're fully supportive of anyone large or small in whatever they want to undertake. I've already set up some filming with Newington Fish Bar in Ramsgate down in Kent for the day. The local radio station KMFM are sending their breakfast presenters down there, and they're doing an outside broadcast. If you've got a shop near a radio station, get in contact with us. We can help you. We can put you in contact with them. We can set up outside broadcasts. We can arrange for you to send in fish and chips to the presenters. It's a simple thing to do. Send in a couple of portions of fish and chips to the breakfast show or the radio show in your local BBC or independent radio station, and you're already winning.
Yeah. No, absolutely. If you get, like you say, if you get people talking about fish and chips, you've won something, haven't you? And I think, and that's the key thing. And, one of the things I think sometimes fish and chips is invisible because it's omnipresent, because it's everywhere and it's part of the British institution. We sometimes forget it exists. But then there's also countless people that eat it twice a week religiously, but they don't make a fanfare over it. It's just part of their staple life. It's just, I know a friend of mine who's got a fish and chip restaurant, and twice a week, without fail, there's customers in there eating in the restaurant. And I think, but they probably don't celebrate it like, they'd probably miss it if it was gone, but they're not saying, we're definitely having fish and chips today. It is just, today's Tuesday, we're having fish and chips, and today's Friday.
Yeah.
So, but I do think if you was to then say, by the way, this shop's now closed, or you can't go there, or all chip shops are gone, they would miss it. So it is one of those things that, like I said, omnipresent but also invisible. It's such a strange meal, like that.
Yeah.
Because I don't, and I've been trying to pass this out in lots of episodes recently, but there isn't a meal that I can think of in the UK that also sits on the same tier as that. Because you can eat fish and chips at the beach, or for a meal, or a pub or a nice gastro pub, or even just the local chip shop or on the park bench. It's amazing how it's celebratory but also standard fare, because you can't say that's the same with Chinese food and Indian food. You just cannot say that's the same. But
no, exactly.
I couldn't imagine eating like a lambuna on the beach. Like, just it just sounds awful. It has its place, but I'm not going to eat it on the beach. I could probably eat a pizza on the beach, I reckon, but not. I don't think I could do, something like Indian food, let's say. But no, I do think. Well, I think my mind is that looking back to, you changed the date for D-Day. Because they asked you to. Looking back on that, do you think there was more of a boost because it was a different day, or was it better because it was a different day, or was it better just because it was linked to D-Day? Any thoughts on that?
I think, if I'm being honest, it was better because it was linked to D-Day. Okay. We took a risk, we took a punt. We had a big discussion about it within the NEODA board as to whether we would change it or not, and it was agreed that we thought we would get a bigger piece of the pie if we coupled up with D-Day. And I think that was true. And actually it lent itself, because they were promoting fish and chips throughout the country anyway, and suggesting that everybody should get involved and eat fish and chips because of the wartime rationing. It lent itself so well to us joining in and promoting fish and chips on that day. And we didn't get any negatives, which is amazing. So I think changing the day was worth it for that. We have obviously been asked to change the day, as I said to you before, about putting it on a different day because Friday's busy, but Friday is synonymous with fish, and it just makes sense to do it.
One argument a friend of mine said just about the Friday point was that, because if we're already busy on a Friday, and let's say if you're a seaside type shop or someone that's busy because it's Whitsun week, if it's most inland shops probably aren't too busy at Whitsun week, whereas everyone sort of that circles the UK would be quite busy, especially if it's nice weather. So they were saying, if I'm already rammed on a Friday and I can barely cope as it is, how am I going to introduce new customers to that environment? And I thought that was a good point, I thought. But again, I suppose your point is also good too, that you're never going to choose a date that pleases everybody.
No.
A friend of mine also said, because again, when I do a podcast like this, I want to reach out and get perspectives from lots of different people, because I don't actually know it all. And also, I have a different viewpoint because I'm not a fish and chip shop. I'm a supplier to fish and chip shops. But one other point that was raised, that a friend of mine said he thought that the COVID one in September was so much better, and he wondered if it was because of COVID, because we'd all been locked in our houses for so long, or was it because it was later in the year and the chips were better? What do you think to that one?
Difficult to say. We do get asked why we have it in June when the chips aren't at their best. But my stock answer to that is always going to be that it's an awareness day and not a fish and chip day. You know, it's not about the quality of the chips. It's about brand fish and chips and trying to make the best of that. I think when we organised the date originally, it was about trying to find somewhere in the busy calendar that wasn't clashing with other things. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, NEODA, for instance, meets twice a year. So for us to have that in September is more difficult because we've already got commitments then. Other shows are going on, so not only in the UK, but other shows in Europe that people attend. We've got the exhibitions, we've got the Fish and Chip Awards. There's a lot in a busy calendar that you've got to try and fit it in. And at the time, everybody felt that June, with the weather, you can do more promotions. The road shows work a lot better when it's hot. I mean, it hasn't always been hot and sunny. In fact, the second year in London rained and rained and rained all day. And poor Craig and Nikki, who had come up from Kingfisher with their van outside Trinity House, we all got absolutely drenched. But that, in fact, was the only year out of the 8 or 9 years we've been running the roadshow in London. That was the only year that the weather was bad. So it does lend itself to having those roadshows in the sunshine and making the best of it during those hot months. So, as you said, we're never going to please everybody. That you've just got to take a punt and
the only after talking to about 10 to maybe 12 people, the only date that I think all of them said that they'd love, and these are all people that do get behind it in June, to be fair, they just said if it was October half term, that would be better, they thought. And this is all people that do get behind it. They're not naysayers. They just said the chips would be better. It'd give you a good swing up until Christmas, give you a nice big push. As for the British weather, you can't do anything about that because it is British weather. No. You could do it in August and you'd probably have rain. So yeah, look, I think as a there's always going to be counter arguments, isn't there? There's always going to be someone that's going to counter it. You could move it to October, and someone's going to say, "Well, June was great for me." Like
exactly.
But I guess it's just to make sure that people that are investing in it, and aside from you ladies as well, that they feel like you're listening and you are taking that on board. And and I think that's the key thing, because I think many people, because they don't hear a lot about what you ladies are planning and doing. And that's probably some of it our fault, my fault, Trade Magazine's fault, because they don't know. We're not coming to you and saying, hey, what are you doing? They probably don't hear anything and think, well, they're not listening. So I do think maybe we could help you there a bit more as well to do better.
No, that's great. And we do always like to hear these, have these conversations. And, when we speak to shop owners at the exhibitions, it's great to get their feedback. And we always do consider all of these things, these comments that are made to us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. One thing I was wondering, you ladies are obviously... Joe mentioned some statistics and figures earlier. You couldn't help me with something while we're doing this. One figure that always gets bandied around, and Lynda, you may know where it come from. I can't find the source. I've asked loads of people. A friend of mine's asked loads of people, and it is. Let me just find it because I put it in my notes. The 10,500 shops. What? Yeah, you're laughing because somebody else already mentioned this.
No, it's been asked.
So I'll read it out just for people listening. So NEODA, National Fish and Chip Day, repeat the unfounded, long-standing, this was a text to me, by the way, 10,500 shops, 1.2 billion sales, 342 portions sold from Seafish /NFFF. Does anybody know where that's come from? Because we can't find the source.
So from the research we've done and the conversations we've had, NFFF say it's Seafish say it's NFFF. Nobody knows.
I've asked AI. I've put those figures in. I've asked 3 different AIs, and they've all gone back to and said the first source they can find is NFFF. Now, I don't want to lay it at their feet either, because they obviously, I've heard that they say it's Seafish, but no one knows. So if nobody knows the source, should we just stop talking about it?
Let's put that out there for this year when nobody's going to take 10,500 fish and chips off.
Because it baffles me that the figure still gets repeated every year somewhere. And no one ever says, I don't think it's even been adjusted for inflation, but it's been around that long. Because For me, I'd probably just think, you know what, those figures just don't stack up. And I remember Marcus Coleman said it once years ago, and I pulled him to one side at the Fish and Chip Awards when Seafish had it, and I said, "Oh, where's that from?" And he goes, "I was given it." So again, like, we just seem to be going around in circles. But, but I do wonder if it's one of those things that can be just set aside now. I wonder, but it's not up to me. But I do think it'd be nice to get somebody out there to commission some new data, because and then actually we have a source to figure out where it actually came from. And I wonder if Seafish again is the best organisation for that. Yeah.
Probably Seafish or NFFF. I mean, at the end of the day, we're not here to represent fish and chip shops. All we're here to do is promote Fish and Chip Day to those sources. Yeah. So for us, it doesn't really matter if there's 10,500, 15,000 or 2,000. We're just doing our best to promote that day to as many people as we can. But I do agree. I think there is a lot of data that has been bandied around for a long time and nobody's backed it up or checked it.
So in some ways, just thinking about what you just said, and you touched on it earlier, and I think I'm trying, my brain's trying to unwrap it. You're not promoting National Fish and Chip Shop Day. You're promoting National Fish and Chip Day. Yeah. So it doesn't matter whether it's fish and chips sold in a pub, a van, a chip shop, a restaurant.
At home.
Or even at home.
At home, or schools, let's say, because I think schools, they could do a good job with that as well. Like on a Friday, our Fish and Chip Friday. Both my kids, well, no, I was going to say both my kids' school, but my kid used to go nursery, but he's not nursery no more. But both their schools that they used to go to, and the one they still go to, does fish and chips every Friday.
Yeah,
my kids,
most do. Most do. Most care. You mentioned care homes earlier. Most care homes do. Obviously, the armed forces. We've got really strong links with the armed forces and have done since year 2, when we had BBC Breakfast News down to Portsmouth naval base, where we had a fish and chip van, Long John's down there, giving away fish and chips to the personnel. And we had Gary Lewis from NEODA gave a great interview on board the ship, HMS Mersey. So they will always, all of the armed forces will always have fish on a Friday. Yeah. So that's why it's hard to change the day, if we were to change the day.
Gary's synonymous. Gary's a good lad. I like Gary.
He's excellent.
I think he brought me into the fold at NEODA, but I remember just meeting him at a wholesaler's once. We were just sitting next to each other, both chatting crap about nothing. And I said, "Oh, what are you doing here?" Anyway, he goes, "I've got a meeting with such and such." I was like, "Yeah, me too." And we turned out that we would both been scheduled at the same time. And we've just remained friendly since. He's a lovely guy. But I would never say, though, Joe, in response to that you can never change the day. I just imagine it'd need a lot more planning.
And we'd never say never.
No, but and I guess you could never do this. You couldn't change. I think you probably need a 2-year cycle. So if you were to change the date, I'm just thinking out loud here, you'd probably have to do it for next year and talk about it now, which probably could cause a little confusion. But I'm not saying you should ever do anything, but I think you should never say never either. And I think, and I don't think you said never, but I'm just going down that road anyway. But no, it's interesting. I was a bit salty about last year's change, though. I was well grumpy because obviously we do the fish and chips for the pensioners, the Chelsea pensioners. So we couldn't do that last year because D-Day is when they have their, what is it? I forgot what they call it. Well, it is D-Day, but it's something they commemorate it a lot, and they don't, they don't take it lightly, obviously, because they're all veterans. So we couldn't do fish and chips from that day. So we did it about a month later, I think.
That's right. Yeah.
So we had to delay that. But it meant I did something else with somebody else anyway. It's fine. But no, I think for me, I do like the way it brings the industry together. I really think that those that should be doing it. But I do think that there's things that could be done better, but also at shop level, we shouldn't just wait for everything to come from NEODA either. I think that everyone can do their own thing. I'm a big proponent of this. I've said it for years when I see constantly drip feeding chip shops with everything, and listeners to this are chip shops and they've heard me talk about this, but you can't take a horse to water. It has to go itself. And I think if the ideas are there, I'm a very big fan of, if someone's got an idea, I want to get behind it, promote it and push it. But I can't make them do it if they don't have those ideas either. So, every year we put together on Ceres' website, for the last probably 6 or 7 years, definitely since COVID anyway, we've put together 2 articles really, why people should get involved with National Fish and Chip Day, And the other article is, if you've chosen to get involved with National Fish and Chip Day, here's a series of ideas. And we obviously do get some pushback. Why should I give free stock? And I'll say, well, look, there was 19 things and you've picked on one. But for me, one of my favourite things is just really giving something back to the community. And everything's a marketing event. Everything is. The whole thing's a marketing event. So if it builds goodwill, then you're laughing, aren't you? And goodwill.
I mean,
Go on, Joe. Sorry.
We had some great ideas from shops at some of the exhibitions recently. Just they're already thinking about it, and just keeping it very low key. Things like just you can download an app that's a spinning wheel to win a prize. A random prize. Just do it once an hour, and it's a pot of mushy peas. But you can make it as big or as small. That's what we were saying earlier, as big or as small as you want it to be. Some of the shops are talking about kids who are 10 this year, or 10 on that day. If you've got a 10-year-old in your house, it's their birthday, they get a free meal if you buy a family meal, that sort of thing. Any shops. So if there are any shops listening, if you're celebrating your 10th anniversary this year, get in touch. Let's have a chat, see what we can do. Promote you and the day together. This kind of great big number 10. Talking of which, I've written to the Prime Minister, as I do every year.
Yeah. Well,
twice this year so far.
You've written to him twice?
Twice this year. Normally, I haven't even had a rejection. Normally, I get a rejection every year. But
what is it you're asking in your letter?
Well, just to support the day, go to the local fish and chip shop and help make fish and chips, have fish and chips delivered, or just give us a message of support.
But I tell you what would help, and maybe I can do this actually. I can get a letter done, a little template letter for all the chip shops to send to their local MP. Because actually, it's great having someone at the number 9 and number 10 to come and have fish and chips. Obviously, I don't know where their local chip shop is. To be fair, it's going to be somewhere in London, obviously. But in fairness, I think that if everyone gets their local MP, that shouts really something positive.
And they do love getting involved, the MPs,
well, they love
because
a,
it
they
looks
look
good for them.
Don't they?
So it's any that we've had involvement with, they've always embraced it and got behind it. We'll wait and see if we hear anything back from number 10 or the King.
The King as well. You're relentless, Joe.
Yeah. Well, I just sent a little message. I said it was your nation's day of celebration.
Yeah, it is.
Celebrating your nation's favourite dish.
It is crazy that they need telling. Like the King's. Yeah, I guess the King, he likes to keep out stuff like that. But to see him with a photo of fish and chips would be quite inspiring to some degree. There's a Turkish restaurant I go to in Leicester with a listener of the show, Charlie Collins, who's got a fish and chip shop in Leicester. Oh, yeah. And there's a photo there of King Charles outside this restaurant talking to people, and I'm like, that can't be real. I literally just go up to this photo and stare at it, just looking if it's a Photoshop. And Charlie's convinced it's a Photoshop. I'm just confused by it. I'm just utterly confused how we ended up in that part of Leicester if it's actually true. But if you did have him at a fish and chip shop that, or at least eating fish and chips, or even a tweet from the royal family somewhere that, you can imagine the impetus that would create. But I think if everyone listened to this, just generally inviting your local MP to come around for fish and chips on that day, because they do love a photo op, because they want to look like the man and the women of the people, don't they? So
absolutely.
So or get them before the day and then release the photo on the day.
That makes sense.
That's the thing. If you can get prepared and do things early, like when we went to Normandy last year, we didn't go on the day, but we released all those photos and all that information for the day. So that's easy enough to do.
No, absolutely. For me, I just always trying to push the positives, because like I said earlier, so years ago Mark Petru had this idea of a national marketing fund. Have you ever considered, because you mentioned how budgets are tight, have you ever considered just having a GoFundMe page for National Fish and Chip Day and just let chip shops donate? Hopefully anyone listening to this got a spare 50 quid milling around, to put towards it.
In fairness, no, we haven't considered that. But at some of the sponsors' meetings, there's been ideas for maybe putting a levy onto something, whether that would be, for instance, the exhibitions, putting a levy onto the people that are running their own stand. A small levy, but I think it's very difficult to put that through without a lot of talk about it first. But possibly a GoFundMe page would work. I don't know, if I've got to be honest. No, we haven't considered it, but we could do.
I think donation is much better than a levy. A levy feels like a tax, a donation feels like a gift. Whereas, so I'm looking at it from a marketing point of view. You could have one done this afternoon, posted on the website, and then it's just promoting it. Just say, look, any spare change that anybody's got, like, or if you want to just donate what you feel like, and then you tell them what you're going to use it for. Obviously, it gives us this, gives us that. And if you had something specific initially, like it's going to help us, I don't know, the run up to National Fish and Chip Day, boost it on Facebook. So all these donations go exactly there. I'm just making it up as I go along, by the way.
Yeah, this is it's a national newspaper advert, something like that.
Well, if you get those sort of donations, even better. Like, do you know what I mean?
Well, I like to start big. Stelios.
I like to start small, which is where we can meet in the middle somewhere.
Facebook page. I've got the front page of the Daily Mail.
There you go. You see, we only need £3 million, but no, I feel like a levy feels like a slap on the wrist, and then
that probably wasn't the right word.
No, I know what you mean, though. No, I do.
It was more like a donation, but
I do think that way though, and I think the other problem with levy is to some degree, or even whatever we want to call that, but let's just call it a levy because it works for the moment. Is I think people then want a say because they felt like they contributed. Whereas a donation, you give that money away. Like when I donate to a charity, I don't stipulate what they must do with it. I've just given that whatever it is, and I walk away from it. So I think it's for the greater good, and I think so. And I do think that's a way to get chip shops involved, or anybody, because again, it's not just for chip shops. It's So I think if that's something I can help you with that, if anything ever you need anything like that. But for me, I just feel like anybody listening to this, and a lot of chip shops do this because that is our core audience. We don't need it. We need all the positivity to sell more fish and chips. So I think that so it's a no-brainer, and that's why we've always been behind it. Not always in tandem with you, then that's true, because I'm And I said to Joe the other day on the phone, Ceres works at their own pace. We always have, and it's a very different pace because we have our own stories, we have our own products to push. So we can't just do it at the same pace as everybody else. But like you said, there's no reason why you can't work at your own pace but then deliver your results on the day. And I think anyone can do that. So they can start now, can't they? Really, they can say, as part of National Fish and Chip Day, we've decided to serve fish and chips at the local nursery for kids. And because I think that's the other thing, we talk about how kids don't like fish and chips, but actually we don't use these events to get kids in front of fish and chips.
We actually do get quite a lot of interest from schools who ask for posters or ask for contacts or ask for help with PR or products and things like that, some merch, some competition merch. We do actually get quite a few schools contacting us in the lead up saying that they're going to put a whole school event on, which is amazing. Really, really good.
Yeah,
we're in talks already with young fish fry Glenn Morrison, and we'd really like to use him with the younger audience and with the younger crowd.
Absolutely.
We're putting together some plans at the moment, and be that sort of some TV stuff or some video content, just how you can get kids involved as well, just some recipe ideas, that sort of thing. Just get those youngsters engaged in fish and chips.
Yeah,
From
absolutely.
a really early age.
How do you see the media landscape? How has the media landscape changed from, let's say, day 1 to day 10 or day 9, because you've not done day 10 yet, or or year 9? Because years ago it was centrally distributed newspapers, the BBC, radio stations. Fast forward 9 to 10 years, we've now got influencers, Instagram, TikTok. How's that changed? That made it easier or harder?
It's made it. You've still got the staples there, and I'm a very old school PR. I've been doing this far more years than I care to admit to. But I will still pick up the phone to a journalist and ring them and say, look, I've got this story. And you get pushback. The journalists sometimes forget that you're actually doing them a favour by giving them content. But they're absolutely inundated with press release after press release each and every day, which is why I'll pick up the phone first, ring them or send them something in the post. But in terms of the landscape, yes, everything is digital. You have got these influencers. They're incredibly difficult to get hold of and extremely expensive, which it never ceases to amaze me how much they can charge for, just a short video talking about the product. But we've got some great relationships with various sort of chefs and well-known people within the industry who are really happy to just sort of get involved. I had a lovely chat with Nigel Barden last week, and he's Mr. Fish and Chips, isn't he? He absolutely loves it. So he wants to work with us again this year and just do what he can on the Simon Mayo show and on Radio London. So it's just, we're always having conversations. This is where I go back to what I said earlier about we don't just start the campaign a couple of months before. It's constant. It's year round. I'm constantly monitoring social media and the media with my Google alerts and my media monitoring to see who's talking about fish and chips, make a note of them, get in contact with them. To me, there's no such thing as a silly idea when it comes to PR. Most of them they might not land, but it doesn't stop me trying, like writing to the king. And
I have to rein her in sometimes, Stelios. Joe and I were friends before Joe started working with Fish and Chips. We've been friends for a long time, but her path went on the PR side, so it was brilliant for me to get her on board. And actually, for that reason, we do spend a lot of time together, and always default back to Fish and Chip Day. Always. I had a brilliant idea about this the other day. Why don't we do that? Why don't we do it? So Fish and Chip Day get quite a lot of value for money out of Joe and I, because we meet probably once a week, if not more than that, and always default to Fish and Chip and end up doing a couple of hours thinking about that while we're having a drink in a pub and coming out with brilliant ideas. So we do get our value for money from Joe.
Absolutely. See, I've been talking to 3 of my international customers just back and forth and saying to them, look, this is a day that we've got coming. And they're like, yeah, but, we're not in Britain. I was like, no, but it's about fish and chips. So I'm hoping to get them on board. And there was a guy that come on the podcast last year, and I want to say, he's quite famous. I won't say who, because he's not committed yet, but he's quite nomadic, so he moves around a lot. But one thing he likes when he's in all the countries that he lives in is eating fish and chips. And I mean, Vietnam, he lives in France, lives in Vietnam, somewhere else. So he's always moving around, and I think he's originally from America, but that's what I mean. He's so nomadic, but the one thing he really likes is fish and chips. So I'm trying to talk to him about maybe doing a post on the day, or even if he eats it before, and then we'll just post it on the day.
Brilliant.
And I just think he just absolutely adores fish and chips, and I think, again, tapping into those networks, because it is mad how social media influencers charge as much as they do, Joe, but also how people think they don't charge anything. This is what's crazy as well.
Exactly.
Social media influencers said this, it must be true, and you're what?
Well, we had a sponsors meeting, in fact, last week, the week before, and one of the suggestions that came out of that were the celebrities that record these very short videos for very little money. And I said to Joe, oh my God, we've had this amazing idea. So someone like Danny Dyer, who has done a video recently on a product, I said, we could get him. And Joe said, I don't think it's as simple as that. When we looked at it, if you are just Joe Public and you're asking Danny Dyer to record you a message to Joe saying happy birthday, 70 quid. If you wanted to mention National Fish and Chip Day, it's 11 grand. So, it's like, so for the personal, nothing to do with trade, he will do it for 70 quid. I don't just mean him, I just mean generally celebs. Yeah. But the price racks up if you want them to say something about an event or something like that. So, there are these ideas out there, but again, the budget doesn't extend to doing that sort of thing for an awareness day like this when it's business related.
We don't want listeners piling in on Danny Dyer, by the way. We don't.
No. There are other celebrities
that are just as annoying. No, but I do think that's one of the things that how do you then get to the younger generation in some ways? Because there is the gatekeepers are there, and that is now influencers. And I hate the word, I really don't like it. But if they are influential in that respect, and they're getting paid to do it, they don't realise. I've got young kids. I've got a 10-year-old and a 6-year-old. They don't realise what they watch is actually an advert. They think that it's legit, and I'm like, no, that's an advert. I'm like, Alex, my son who's 10, is like, how is that an advert, Dad? I'm like, because they don't do that for free. He wouldn't. That influencer that's talking about a football or whatever it is would never mention those things if he wasn't paid the 10 grand or whatever it is. So but again, I guess this is where guerrilla marketing comes in, and this is where you've now got to start thinking again more than ever, how do we get past those and try deliver our message in a cheeky way.
If any shops have got any regular celebs who come in, or celebs that have just popped in a couple of times, there's the celebs do like their fish and chips. So, you quite often see shops posting pictures of them. Let's utilise those relationships that the shops have got. Let's get in contact with them. I was watching Gogglebox at the weekend on Catch Up. And a couple of the characters in there were talking about their local fish and chip shop. So I've made a note of it. I'll be contacting that fish and chip shop and saying, they've said no before in the past, but can we get fish and chips onto Gogglebox on that Friday? Yeah. You get them eating it on the Thursday when they film it, and it goes out on that Friday.
What is the chances of like EastEnders? There's a chip shop in EastEnders. There's I'm sure there's food mentioned on Coronation Street. Like, is it easy to contact those people? I guess it's easy to contact them, but is it easy to influence them to say, look, this would be great because it is a national dish and you're EastEnders?
Yeah, we did manage it once, didn't we? We managed to get a poster in Roy's Cafe on Coronation Street that was up for probably a month. But that was the only one time we've ever managed it.
We send in the posters every year to the set designers. It's always tricky. I mean, it's not specifically product placement because it's not a brand as such. It's brand fish and chips, so it's generic. So we stand more chance than others. But it's always there on the back in the background. And then I've got this thing of just phoning into radio stations on the way to the exhibition. Was it 2 years ago? I managed to get on Claudia Winkleman from the platform of King's Cross to talk about the fish and chip exhibition, and got in National Fish and Chip Day there. So as I say, I'm a dog with a bone with this, really.
Well, I guess you've got to be. I read this really good article once, but I read the books with it, but I read an article that reminded me of it, and it was about guerrilla marketing, and they said how when Red Bull first got started, they didn't have a lot of money to market Red Bull. But what they did have was a huge inventory of cans. So what they did, they went all through London, New York and everything, outside nightclubs, and they just filled up the bins with cans. And people were thinking, what are these drinks? Like, why are these drinks everywhere? They're on the floor, broken. They'd leave them right next to the bin, sort of like crushed a little bit. But then loads of and I just thought to myself, is there some sort of guerrilla marketing we could do on the day? It probably needs some planning, but I think there's something that could be had there, But I just think, again, that one of the upsides the industry's got, and it's also a downside, is the fact that we are everywhere. It's omnipresent, but also invisible. But and also it might be...
and it's independent, isn't it? I mean, most shops, they're independent, they're family run. There isn't that sort of cohesion that you could get with, if it were a franchise, for example. But anything like that, we'd love to hear any ideas that anyone's got for anything guerrilla marketing, and if we can make it happen, then let's do it.
Yeah,
I think you just need to waft vinegar around, don't you? Because that's the thing. Everyone goes,
I think that's not a bad idea, to be honest. Like, if you just got like an air freshener that smelled of salt and vinegar, the only downside is people might want salt and vinegar crisps.
Exactly. Yeah.
that would literally be our luck, wouldn't it? You'd like walk around wafting this smell everywhere, like crisps. Yeah. So, but no, I do think that. But there is nothing greater, like the smell of fish and chips. So, again, with salt and vinegar on it as well, it could really motivate people. But I think if everybody just gets in touch with all their networks, whoever they know, like you said, if it's a celebrity, if it's not a celebrity, if it's a local influencer, and again, it helps them jump on the bandwagon, I guess. And I guess sometimes also it's the smaller influencers that are coming through because they want the stories to sort of promote themselves, So I do think there's something there. Is there ever been like an idea that you guys have thought maybe was too ambitious that you'd love to do if you had all the money in the world? Oh,
yeah, there's been a couple. Well, one that came up last year actually on the sponsors meeting was to do a leaflet drop from an aeroplane.
Okay.
But I just thought we're just going to upset everybody there with the environmental side of it. And although it was rice paper and biodegradable, it's really hard to know whether you're going to get something positive out of that or too much negativity.
Is that a bad thing? Like that, because that is like real guerrilla marketing, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I saw yesterday. Again, it's an old story, but it refreshed in my feed, and it was how Burger King were doing this. They wanted to do a campaign on how women were underrepresented within the fast food industry. So they put an article saying, just a bold tweet and a bold graphic saying women belong in the kitchen. So now you can both see how that had good intentions, but absolutely backfired. Yeah. And then they had to then put out a second story to actually explain what they meant.
What they meant.
Yeah. And then it was like the third story was an apology. Now, I'm still talking about it years down the line. You know, it was probably 5-6 years ago. And I get what they were doing, and I still am convinced that they knew what they were doing, because Burger King are very tongue-in-cheek. They're very good with their marketing, you know. And you know, look at like the likes of Audi, all of these, they're very tongue-in-cheek. I think the Conservatives are now doing it, aren't they? They've now got some, so they're doing it. Everyone's realised that on social media, you need to have this constant tongue-in-cheek, you know, like, and that's what makes retweets or reshares and so on. So I do, you know what? If someone dropped like 1 million leaflets from God knows where, like, and they landed everywhere, you know what? People would moan, like, there's no doubt, but it's no different to someone littering a car park with leaflets, you know, trying to get.
No, I suppose there's nothing they say about bad PR, is it? Every PR is good PR.
And paper's paper. It doesn't matter whether it's rice paper or paper. It's going to dissolve. It's going to rain in about 1 day in England anyway. So it's just going to. No, but I like the idea of that. No, I think many people listening to that would love such an extreme gesture. But I wonder if that moment's passed now, because that also fit with the D-Day thing, I would imagine, or not, or was.
No, it wasn't. No, it was nothing to do with D-Day. It was. I mean, it started off with an aeroplane being flown over somewhere, dragging a big banner saying National Fish and Chip Day. But I think in terms of the logistics and the legalities, you couldn't fly it where you might have wanted to fly it, so it would have had to have been flown somewhere that was a bit random.
Over a field in the countryside.
And was going to cost quite a lot of money. I mean, we did have a contact, and it was a reduced rate, but it was still going to cost quite a lot of money. And then that came down to the idea of leaflet dropping, and that was quite a lot of money as well. And you know, you've got to get an aeroplane up there to do it. You've got to produce the bits of paper that are going to get dropped. So nothing's for nothing, is it? So,
no. Then this is the truth. Nothing is for nothing. I think everyone, you know, but I do think anything anyone can do on a local level to bolster what's coming down from a top-down level. I've always said this, like in this industry, we always wait for top-down, whereas I think if you do a bit of bottom-up as well, it sort of helps. And I was at a shop in London the other day, last week, and a really good shop owner. He's got a great reputation. I won't say who it is. And he was whinging a bit, saying, you know, why aren't the people at the top doing this? And I said, well, they do this, this, and this, and this. And I gave like 3 examples. So now it's your job to do something with that and meet them halfway. And he was like, I see what you mean, actually, but I'm too busy. And I was like, well, if everyone took that approach, we'd never do anything. And
nothing would ever get done.
So, and we do get that a little bit with the shops about posters. Too busy to put the posters up. Seriously, if you can't put a poster up in a window, then we're losing, aren't we? We're failing at our job. So these posters are downloadable from the website or given free by your distributors or your suppliers. So even something as simple as that, just get the word out there to the consumer that it's Fish and Chip Day. Just stick the poster up with sellotape. It's fairly simple.
I tell you, it makes me laugh because you mentioned that they put the poster up in Roy's Cafe. Well, it's if it only lasted a month, that's very inaccurate, because when posters go up in chip shops, I've noticed they either don't get put up or they do get put up and get left there for about 19 years. So,
there is that,
And frostier as the years go on.
I was in a shop recently, and it's before Christmas actually, and when we were called the Batter Company, we produced a poster talking about VAT. And that was probably about 12 years ago, maybe longer, 14 years ago. And I remember just looking at the wall at this washed out poster with an old Batter Company logo on it, thinking, I recognise that. And the guy's like, it's been here since I bought the shop, because I don't even know who that company is. I was like, well, that was our company. And he's like, oh, okay. And you think, and I do think it's one of those things that you see like pucker pie posters in shop windows, and they're literally greyed out completely. Like, and you do think stuff like, you walk past it every day, and you've never thought to yourself, I'm going to change that. But again, like you can't help somebody do that. They've got to do that themselves, haven't they? So, you know, but now with digital media, like I do think, you know, at the very least, some social media posts, you know, all of these things people should really be doing. Have I missed anything? Have we not discussed something that maybe we should have?
No, I don't think so.
You know, because I want to give you guys a chance to sort of like promote something as well. But I think we have, like, you know, we've discussed most things, haven't we?
Yeah.
And
we just want as many shops as possible to get involved. You know, it's the Big 10 this year. A lot of work's gone on to get us to 10. You know, thanks to NEODA and all the sponsors. So let's just get as many shops as we can to fully embrace it and get involved.
How many shops would you say on average do get involved that you know of? I know it's hard to count, but just from anecdotally hearing back from people.
It is hard to count. It's a bit like whether there's 10,500. I have no idea. What I do know is that it does tend to be the same shops that do the same promotions or the good promotions. And we'd love to extend that. We'd love to get a few more shops involved. I don't know how we could quantify how many get involved. For me, the exhibitions have become busier. More and more people do want to engage and do want to ask. I mean, our merchandise that is available to buy at the exhibitions is also available on the website. People get quite excited. They come out, oh, what new colours have you got? What new things have you got? So there's definitely more interest from the shops over the last few years.
Social media has grown year on year. Many more shops getting involved on social media and sort of shouting about what they're doing. It is hard to put a figure on it.
Yeah, but the figure you do want to do is increase it, and that's the key.
Yeah.
So anybody listening to this, there's absolutely zero reason why you shouldn't be involved in some way or the other. You know.
No, exactly.
Well,
absolutely.
Ladies, thanks for your time. It's been amazing. We'll do everything we can to keep helping, and let's hope more people eat more fish and chips.
Thanks, Stelios. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time.
That's a wrap with today's episode with Lynda and Joe. What do you think? Do you fancy getting involved with National Fish and Chip Day? Did you like what they had to say? Let us know. We'd love to hear your feedback. We can only make all of these things better if we know what you think. I'd love to hear your thoughts about what stood out to you in this episode. So join us in the Ceres podcast discussion group on Facebook and let's keep the conversation going. At Ceres, we're all about supporting your business, whether it's with top quality products, valuable insights, whatever it is. If there's something on your mind, reach out because we'd absolutely love to hear from you. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you on the next episode.